on the radio. Let's see here. Hello. Yeah, I got everything here. Let's see. How's my voice tonight? Maria, 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 Maria. I'm doing that as well. Hey, did you hear that on the latest Barbra Streisand record she sings Stout-Hearted Men? How's that for a role reversal, gang, huh? How's that one, huh? Give me some men who are stout-hearted men, and I'll soon give you 10,000 more. I like to hear Barbara do that one. That's very good. Shades of Nelson Eddy. Oh, hey, listen, you are very lucky, friends. You have, for once in your crummy, miserable life, that poor little pockmarked thing that you carry around inside of you, for once, you've tuned to the right spot of the dial at the right time. And if you want to hear high comedy in the highest, most exquisite sense, so exquisite that you can almost taste it, you've come to the right point. I have a tape tonight that is a full-blown, total, complete, unadulterated gas. Now, it was made by one of the guys who works the show with me here, Larry Londino, who's an engineer. And like true engineers, Larry only thinks he's got a one-track mind, and wherever he goes, he takes his little tape recorder. Now, that can be very embarrassing. But nevertheless, he does it. It does. I'll tell you, a tape recorder nut is even worse than a candid camera nut. Because in a way, sound is far more descriptive than pictures. You know this old Chinese canard, that if one picture's worth 10,000 words, forget it. That's all over and done with. You see, because the Chinese invented that canard before Pentron came up with a tape recorder, before Minnesota Mining got in the act. And I would like to say this. It is my considered opinion as a worker here in the great grapevines, the vineyards, as a worker in the wheat fields of communication, that a well-edited piece of tape will do more than 400,000 feet of color TV film. Now, you could see the same thing on TV that you're going to hear now, and it would be nothing. I mean, with Robert Stack standing around, one of the great actors of our time, Robert Stack. I always feel that any time I see Robert Stack, I always feel like he's going to break into a song about Micron with foaming action. But then again, I'm just, I'm a sorehead. I'm a recognized sorehead. It's a terrible scene. And no wonder, you're right. No wonder I don't have any friends. I could just as easily be a friend of Robert Stack if I didn't say things like this around there. Yeah, that's right. I'm the first guy in the block who does not think Sammy Davis Jr. is the greatest singer in the world. And that, what that'll do to you. Oh, yeah, the whole shtick. I had to snick and everybody after me. It was terrible. But nevertheless, this tape, it's just, you've tuned to the right spot. This tape was made by Larry. Now, it was made a week or so ago. In fact, let's see, about 2 weeks ago, right? And it was made on the opening day of a very important season. Now, for those of you who don't know that some men live by seasons, other men live by years. There are some guys who, now, it's not, the seasons vary. Now, for example, I know one guy who lives for 1 week of the year. Now, this guy happens to be a fishing nut. Now, the average Brooklyn type Sheepshead Bay fisherman, I mean, he can go fishing any time of the year. Actually, that's not called fishing by a real fishing nut. That's called dredging. So that's something else again. But this guy is a nut. He lives for 1 week of the year. Now, what does he live for? Well, early in May, in Maine, the landlocked salmon season opens for fly casting. Well, he rushes up to Maine. He freezes his you-know-what off. The snow is still 8 feet deep in Maine at that time of the year. And he gets a cold, and his sinuses back up on him. He has terrible sinuses. This guy, from 1 week, this guy's sinuses are backed up all the way to December, just from that 1 week in May. And he rushes all the way up there. He leaves everybody in the lurch. He runs up, quits his job, the whole thing. If his boss told him he couldn't go, he would tell his boss a terrible thing to do with his job. So the boss knows it. So every week he goes, that 1 week, he runs up to Maine, And he takes out his casting rod, and he goes out like mad, and the ice floes are all around him, and he has this Indian guide, and for 1 week, he flays the surface of this poor innocent lake, never catches anything. He has never caught a landlocked salmon. But that doesn't matter. Then the week is over, and his year is done. He goes back home, and he thinks about next year. That's a seasonal man. Now, there is the kind of guy who lives for those 10 Sundays when Joe Namath is running around out there. You know, I mean, it's kind of silly, but nevertheless, there are people who do devote their lives, and all during the winter. Oh, yes, I suspect that eventually the pro football season is going to be a year-round operation. And not only that, they're going to have 3 games a day. You know, they're going to have a morning game, an afternoon game, and a doubleheader at lunchtime and supper, and there's going to be a tripleheader from 8 until 10 that night, and there's going to be 7,000 teams, you know, the expansion, you know, that everybody. We all know that that's good for football. And for those of you who have seen the Miami Dolphins play, you know how good expansion has been for football. Matter of fact, the Hesville Eagles could have beaten that crowd. No wonder Joe set a record against them. They play beanbags, not football. But nevertheless, that's a seasonal man. One of the most virulent of all the seasonal people you're going to hear tonight, one of the nuttiest of all the seasonal nuts, is the duck hunter. And if you have never seen a duck hunter in full flight, if you've never seen a duck hunter with the heat on him, as a matter of fact, a duck hunter in heat is a sight. I mean, with a canvas jacket, these guys, they read magazines and they buy books and they sit around all year and polish their 12-gauge shotgun and dream dreams of these beautiful V-flights of mallards coming in the dawn. Yeah, and they always see themselves, every duck hunter I've ever known. In fact, you see pictures on Field and Stream and Sports Afield of these duck hunters standing up in a canvas boat. You see, and they're dynamic-looking guys, square-jawed, and they are apparently in a trackless wilderness. Have you noticed that? The pictures always shows them. You see all around them cattails and reeds, and you see coming in at 4 o'clock. You see coming in at 150 feet, you see this magnificent flight of canvasbacks, all of them weighing 7 pounds, and all of them are in this perfect formation, and these guys are standing up, and the dogs are waiting to go out and catch the birds, you know, and bring them in and all that stuff. But the point is that the duck hunter always sees himself in a sylvan setting. He sees himself alone, too. He sees himself hunting these ducks in a kind of wilderness like the Great Swamp of New Jersey. Well, now, Larry Londino, just one hour or two before the duck season, and incidentally, for those of you who don't know anything about ducks and the duck season always opens at dawn, at 6 a.m. It's not really dawn, it's a little light, but it's dawn. It's dark, and duck hunters go out on the opening day. Now, no good duck hunter, ever misses opening day. This is, really seriously, this is like one of the devout not making the scene on Easter. You just don't miss this day. This is a big day. And so duck hunters have been known, seriously, they've been known to leave their wives, they've been known to shoot their kids who tried to prevent them from going. They've been known, the madness is unbelievable. And so, as the duck season opens, the night before, duck hunters prepare. They've got their license, they've got their canvas coats out, they've got them all loaded with 12-gauge shotgun shells, and it's a terrible thing. You have to get up so early in the morning to go duck hunting. About 3 o'clock in the morning, they get in their cars, and they go out into the wilderness. And it's usually cold, 6 o'clock in the morning. They usually get out there around 4 or 5, and they get out into their blind. Now, Larry told me that he went out, and he's not a duck hunter particularly, but he was with these duck hunters. And you'll see what I mean in just a few seconds. I'll tell you, they really are. And he took along his tape recorder, just for, just kicks. And so at 4 o'clock in the morning, they were sitting in a little boat. There were 3 of them. And he said it was so black out there. And they were way out in Jersey somewhere, out in the swamps, out in the lake out there. And way up somewhere near Dover, out in Jersey, out in the hills there. And it's absolutely, he says, he did not see a soul. Dead silence. And the 3 of them are sitting in a boat. It's 4 o'clock in the morning. They've got their 12-gauge shotguns already. They've got their dogs. And the silent water is all around them. And Larry said he had this feeling that he was so alone, they were so alone in the wilderness that there wasn't another person within 500 miles of him. And now it's 5 o'clock in the morning, and they're watching their watches, very careful. It's 5:30 in the morning. Remember, the duck season opens at exactly 6 a.m. It is now 5:45. And they're beginning to get a little anxious, and it's exciting. All year long, they've been waiting for this moment. It is now 5 minutes to 6. And from way off in the distance, they can hear the sound just about a minute and a half before 6. A warden off in the distance, way off somewhere, fired off a gun to show them that the duck hunting season was now in full flight. And he said there was a pause. And all the while, his tape recorder is running. He thinks they're by themselves out in the wilderness. There's not a soul. And now you will hear the exact instant that the duck season opened in New Jersey about 2 weeks ago. Remember, it is 6 a.m., and Larry thinks he's all by himself there. They're just 3 guys himself, 2 other guys. And here is the first word. Suddenly, over the far hill, in the bleak dawn, appears a duck. And we hear...
Come on, come on. Here they come, baby. Here they come, get ready. Here they come. They're going up
This makes the DMZ like greasy kid stuff. Talk about Mig Alley.
Take it, Tony.
Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, we got it. We got one that comes out. What's this one?
Well, there you heard the opening of duck season in Jersey. And Larry said that there was more flame. He said that from all around in the distance. He said he thought they were alone, He said suddenly guys jumped out of the bushes. He said there were more. And for those of you who want to know the results, well, they got 2 ducks. One walked into camp. He gave himself up. And the other one had been drinking and never did get off the water. But listening to that scene, I'll tell you, it just reminds you once again, being a duck in Jersey is hell. It just ain't easy. That reminds me, speaking of sitting ducks, this is WOR in New York, friends. Cha-cha, the chimney, cha-cha-cha. All right, sing it out, baby, sing it out. Let's hear it. Come on, sing it, baby. Yes, friends, all in favor of having a party, holler, hey, Miller High Life. Miller High Life beer is the life of the party, Dad. In ice-cold bottles and in cans, Miller spells instant fun, instant hospitality, and instant conviviality. So when you plan the party, plan to serve popular Miller High Life, the life of the party, the champagne of bottled beer, with the quality that reflects, of course, your magnificent good taste, because you're a person with such great taste. You're a person who really knows what's happening, man. And if you serve Miller High Life, that shows that you're one of the real people. So buy the right one, man. Miller High Life. Wow. And by the way, in case you're coming down to the limelight this week, Larry will be behind the control board. And he's saying one of the great moments, though, came when he was sitting down in that little boat there, and the guns are going off all around him, and the the lead, the little pellets kept falling down. So it was coming down like rain from the sky, hit them on the hat and all that. But that reminds me, before we get into this, that reminds me of something, though. Hunting. I'm not a hunting type, particularly. Before we get into that, I'd like to remind you, speaking of the Limelight, that we are going to be at the Limelight again this week from 10:30 until midnight. By the way, I have to reiterate, there are no tickets to the Limelight. People keep writing me. I get letters from all over the country saying, please send me tickets to the Limelight. No tickets at all involved. And we're down there every Saturday night from 10. We usually start the show really earlier, about 10:10 to about 10. Then we go on the air 10:30, and we stick around to midnight. And it's wild, I'll tell you. I look forward all week to doing that show down at the Limelight. That is, I get letters from people. It's funny. The crowd divides into two separate crowds. There's one crowd that digs the Limelight show to the end, and then there's the other crowd that I guess it's curious. They hear people laughing, and they can't quite figure out what the scene is. Do you know that up in Connecticut, there's a whole lot of kids who have Limelight parties every Saturday night, and they turn on the Limelight, the show, and their radios. They sit around down in the basement. And, of course, a few years ago when we first started the Limelight show, they would eat popcorn and drink Yoo-Hoo. But things have changed. And now on Saturday night, they turn on the Limelight. And you know how Connecticut is. You've been reading about Connecticut recently, haven't you? Oh, boy. I understand our show is great for accompanying various things. However, if you'd like to make the Limelight scene, I would suggest you give them a call for a reservation, because you don't want to get disappointed, come all the way down and find that you're sitting up at the bar. So give them a call at Oregon 52212, and they'll take your reservation. We'll be down there. Listen to that scene there. Now, I'm going to warn you. This is a hunting story. And whenever I pick up, I do a great deal of writing these days for Field and Stream. And I get the magazine and I read it. It comes in the office, and I read about these intrepid hunters. And have you ever noticed almost every story in these outdoor magazines begins with Charlie and I got into the car at dawn, and we headed out into the wilderness. Little did we realize that 15 minutes later we were to discover this bass lake that had never been discovered by man. In fact, the foot of man had never stepped upon these shores. Well, 5 minutes after Charlie got his tackle out of the back of the station wagon, the bass were chasing him through the woods, attempting to steal his bassarino from him. They were jumping into the creel. They never have the story of the other way around. The story of total and abject failure, which is more like what most of us actually have happened to us. And also the strange passions that come to light in the various pursuits that can be found out in the primal wilderness. Oh, yeah. For example, I'm up in Maine one time. Now, I'm a man of the city. Now, I live in New York. I'm up in Maine one time, and I'm standing on the shore of this lake. And all of a sudden, I see, out in the water there, I see a dot moving across the surface. And I take my glasses, and I look through the glasses, and I'll be doggone if it isn't a moose. And there's a moose out there swimming out in the water, and he's about 400 feet across. This fantastic head. I'll tell you, the head was just... The antlers alone must have stretched 30 feet. He had a wingspan on him like a DC-7, And he is out there swimming in this water, and behind him is a dog swimming. And this dog must have weighed 12 pounds. And the dog is going, ow, ow, ow. And the moose is swimming along across the water, and he keeps turning his head back and looking at this dog. And I thought to myself, dog, maybe your concept of the moose world is only abstract. But if you ever catch up with that moose, it's going to be not abstract any longer, but it's going to be real. As a matter of fact, I don't know of any more ferocious creature than a moose. And then I thought to myself, is this like man? He himself is pursuing things which he does not really know the meaning of and the final implication about. Well, one time, I learned these things early as a kid. I'm 16 years old. Now, I know I was 16 specifically because I had to buy a hunting license. And in the state of Indiana, you do not have to buy a hunting license until you're 16. And that was a big moment. You know, I was now old enough to buy a license. And that makes you very official. You go out and you buy this license, a resident license. It costs $2.50. And you get a button. They issue a button out in Indiana that you put on your hunting cap. They have this little corduroy hat. And I had been reading these magazines like a nut. I was a real, but all totally abstract. It was a totally abstract outdoor nut. And I had been reading hunting and fishing magazine and Field and Stream. And I'd been reading magazines like Sports Afield. And my specialty was really dreaming about fishing. We rarely went fishing in our family, but I would always think about it. And hunting was something that guys did in stories. Now, there was a lot of hunting, though, around our area out there. They had a lot of rabbits. They had pheasants. They had quail. And they had each other. That's one thing that hunters do a lot of. They wing each other in the bushes once in a while, you know. And that can be exciting. And do you know that up in Maine today, if you shoot a moose, you get 5 years? That's right. If you shoot a person by mistake in hunting, the average sentence is about 11 months. I'll tell you the truth. A friend of mine just came back from Maine. He said he was amazed that if you shoot a moose out of season, it's 5 years, Dad, and like a $1,000 fine or something. He says, but if you shoot a person and you're hunting up there, the average sentence is about 11 months. So, he was up there in the woods, and he had this .30-06 there, and he sees this guy going through the woods, and he's weighing up against, he's thinking about this. Let's see if you shoot a person out of season. And he wanted to shoot something. He came all the way up there, hadn't seen anything but a couple of rocks, and some beer cans, and he wanted to shoot something. I will not tell you how it came out, except to say that he's got to go back up. His hearing is next month. But nevertheless, hey, got him. He says he's had them mounted. But, he's going to have him mounted in his full hunting costume. When you get a hunter up there, you do, especially in full plumage, with the red coat, it's very colorful. Have him over your mantelpiece there. And he has him mounted, see, with his gun underneath it, so he winged a good one. But nevertheless, I'm a kid, see. And I knew a lot of other kids. And some of them went hunting, and some of them didn't. Others played football at that time of the year, and that's what I did. And every Saturday afternoon, we would go out and play football. We'd play football Friday night, playing football in school, high school, and all this. And hunting was a very abstract thing to me. Until one day, I had one of the most embarrassing, rotten moments I ever had happen in my life that came about as a result of the spirit of the chase. And I'm going to ask a question here that may sound somewhat peculiar. Have any of you ever heard of a creature called the snipe? You have? Are you sure? You know what a snipe is, huh? Well, have any of you ever gone out hunting snipe? Do you know? Would you like to hunt snipe, friend? Huh? Nothing like hunting snipes. Well, let me tell you about the time I went hunting snipes, and I'm 16 years old. I shall never, ever forget it. The old man had these friends, Zudoc, Harry Gertz, that crowd, and, whenever any season came around, these guys would take part in it, but they took part in it the way office workers take part in stuff. Like, for example, the fishing season would come along, and they'd get all excited, and they'd talk a lot about it. And finally, late in July, after the season was open for 7 months, they would go out and rent a rowboat made out of lead at 2 o'clock in the morning and row out to the middle of Cedar Lake and drink Atlas Prager beer and swear, tell dirty stories, and fish for crappies. This would extend from about 2 a.m. to about 2:45 a.m., when Gertz would fall in. They would pull Gertz back in the boat, and then they would row back into shore and finally get all the slimy water out of Gertz and all the Atlas Prager out of them, and then they would come home. And that would be fishing. And they always talk about going fishing again, see? Well, they were that kind. Well, one day they decided they were going hunting. They're all going to go hunting. Well, my old man never went hunting. The only thing he ever hunted, was very funny. He was an ex-pool shark, and his idea of hunting was going down to the pool room and looking for a mark, that kind of thing. But they're going to go hunting. So they all go out, and they borrow these canvas coats where they put the 12-gauge shotgun shells in. The old man borrows a gun, and they take off in the Oldsmobile. Gertz, Zudak, my old man, and a guy named Sherby, Mr. Bruner. All of them take off into the dawn. Well, they did not take into account the fact that Mr. Bruner had been drinking for at least 7 months prior to this time. And they got him out. He's sick in the car all the way on out. This was later. This came out, see. And they arrive at the place where they're going to hunt. And they discovered, after they got out there, that they had to have licenses. This was something that never occurred to them. And there was no place to buy licenses because they were in a swamp. So they decided, well, the hell with hunting. And they opened up the back of the Oldsmobile, and they took out this case of beer. I'm telling you exactly what happened. Well, they're sitting on the shore of the swamp drinking a beer, and my old man says, it's funny. I remember him saying, he says he never realized that beer was so good at 4 o'clock in the morning. And so they're sitting there, and it's dark, and they're drinking beer, and raising, Cain and yelling and hollering. And all of a sudden, out of the darkness, they hear these shots going off, just like the tape you heard. And the shots start going off, and these guys are watching, and it's getting dawn, and they can see the other hunters out there. And, of course, they don't have any license. They're very law-abiding types. And anyway, they were about 3/4 bagged by this point. They lost all interest in hunting. They were just sitting there having a good time. Sherby was telling his jokes, and Zudak was telling the rotten jokes. The worst, of course, of them all was Harry Gertz. Harry Gertz had a catalog of dirty jokes that made as a matter of fact, he had them in categories. Like the Sears Roebuck Company put stuff in categories like underwear, like farm equipment. He had various jokes. He says, "You want to hear an Irish joke?" And somebody said, "Yeah, tell me." Then he tell this terrible Irish joke. Somebody said, "You want to hear a camel joke?" He had camel jokes. he had jokes that you couldn't even tell. It was so bad. And so Gertz is out there telling the jokes. And they're sitting around. Now it's about 8 o'clock in the morning, and somebody says, "How about let's get in some breakfast?" So they decided they were going to have breakfast. And so they're loading up the car. They're putting all their guns back. When all of a sudden, out of the sky, out of the grayness of the sky, comes a bird. And this bird comes flying down. He's been winged by somebody 4 miles away, and he just comes plunk. And he lands right on the bank. Right by Zudak. And there's the bird. It's a duck. And Zudak says, "It's a duck." And Sherby says, "I'll be damned, it is a duck." And the 4 of them stand there looking at the duck. And this is the way the scene was later pieced together by the survivors. And he says, "It's a duck." And Sherby says, "He's dead. Somebody shot him." There's a duck laying there. And Gertz says, "Yeah." And then my old man, and it was my old man, I must admit, was the one that started the whole scene. The old man says, "Let's take it." So Sherby says, "Yeah, we didn't shoot him." He says, "He just came down here. What are you supposed to do, leave him there?" And so they grab the duck, and now they're going to take this duck, they're going to bring it home and have breakfast. They're going to make the duck for breakfast. Somebody, you know how guys, when they get a snootful, they think of all this terrible stuff they're going to do. So they're going to come home and they're going to make a duck. Have a duck for breakfast. This is a duck. Well, they'd be surprised at home we come home with a duck. And so they stick the duck in the back of the car with what remained of the Atlas Crocker, and they start driving down this corduroy road away from the swamp. They had enough hunting for the year anyway, and they didn't want to hunt. They just wanted to sit around and drink beer is what they wanted to do. So they drive over the corduroy road, and they're yelling and hollering, and Zudak is drunk. He's falling in and out of the car, and they finally get Gertz back in again. He runs out in the bushes. I had to heave a little bit, and so they get him back, and they're driving along, and they finally get out on the highway, and they make a right turn, when suddenly a car materializes ahead of them, and 2 guys with big hats get out. And one of them walks back towards the car and says, "Hey, you guys, so let's see your hunting." He says, let's see your licenses. And Zudak says, "We ain't got no license. We didn't even hunt, for crying out loud." You see, you didn't hunt? And they had come out of the swamp, see, and they were all carrying 12-gauge shotguns, and they got these coats all over them. Of course, the coats still had the shotgun shells stuck in them, and a lot of beer all over the front of them and other stuff. They brought potato chips and all that, you know. So he says, we ain't been hunting. We don't have no license. We just drank some beer. We come back here. Get out of the way. We're going to go home and have breakfast. We'll make a duck. And the guy said, you're going to do what? Go home and make breakfast. Well, with that, the guy says, get out of the car, you four. Out gets the old man, Zudok, Sherby, and Gertz. The four of them stand there, you know. Bruner comes out of the bushes. He's been running along behind the car. Now they got five. And so the guy says, okay, so let me look in the car. So the two of them start from one end of the car to the other, and they start going through the car. And Zudok is saying, we ain't been hunting. We just fired a shot. What's the matter with you? And the trunk goes up, and out comes the mallard. It's as dead as a mallard ever gets. You know, and he's peppered with this shot. You know, a beautiful shot. Whoever it was got him right in the, you know, the vital spot. And he holds this thing up, and Gertz takes one look at it and says, that's our duck. We didn't shoot him. He just came down and fell in the trunk. Just came down out of the sky like that. Well, I don't have to tell you the rest of it. They take the five of them to the local justice of the police. They line them up. And all five of them are standing there protesting like mad, which, by the way, did not help their case any, because all five of them maintained that they had not fired a shot, and yet there it is. There's a dead mallard. And so all of them, each one singly, was fined $56. By the way, this figure became legendary in our family, because any time my mother went out and like she would buy a 75-cent bottle of Evening in Paris perfume, and the old man would flip his cork and say, what is this? You think I'm made out of money? What is this? There'd be a long, pregnant silence. And my mother would say, yes, I well remember that $56 duck, which went over like a lead duck in our house all the time. And the old man would slam the door, and he'd go stalking up. So it cost him $56 for this duck. Well, naturally, you know, when they got home, there was a lot of yelling and hollering. And, oh, what an argument. I want to tell you, Larry, there was an argument in my family's house that went, and that was on a Saturday. That argument started about 4 o'clock Saturday afternoon and did not conclude till the following Arbor Day, which came, as you know, late in the spring. And this was in the fall. Well, I became very excited about hunting then. That was a big thing with me. You know, hunting was a big shtick, and I got all excited. And it was a real thing. Now, hunting became real. Sherby had been hunting, the old man had been hunting. And by the way, for your information, these two guys did not allow Sherby or my old man or Gertz or Bruner to bring the duck back. They confiscated the duck, which was the final kick in the you-know-what. But they all got the fine. And by the way, they were also all forced to buy a license, too. They had to pay whatever it is to buy the duck license, which they never used again. I mean, you know, this is the way life really works in real life, you know. And so I'm a kid, you know, and I'm getting all excited about hunting. The old man's got this shotgun now in the house, and he's got this leather jacket with the thing with the jacket where they use it for the recoil up on the shoulder and all. I'm very excited. I'm watching this thing. And one day, and I will never forget this. In fact, I never forgave the guy who was responsible for this. There was a guy in the neighborhood you never heard me talk about named George Beegee. Now, the reason I don't talk about Beegee, he and his buddy Delbert Bumpus. Now, you're going to think I made that name up, but Delbert Bumpus was Beegee's buddy, and they were big, see, and they hung around with Lawrence Stryker, these were the big kids. See, they were, you know, I was about 15, 16. These guys were like 18 and 19. They were really on top of the scene, and really hip-type kids. And I'm always hanging around trying to make the scene with these guys. And one day, George Beegee says to me, he says, Shep, you're talking about hunting. He said, hey, Corky, that was Stryker's name. He says, hey, Cork, how about we take Shep snipe hunting? I said, yeah, gee whiz, I'd love to hunt snipe. That'd be great. He said, well, have you ever seen a snipe? I said, no, but yeah, sure, I read about them in a book. I read about snipe. They go snipe hunting. Don't they go snipe hunting in Virginia, places like that? There's some kind of a bird with a long beak. He says, no, these are Indiana swamp snipes. And I said, Indiana swamp snipes? He says, yeah. He says, and I'll tell you how you hunt for them. He says, I'll tell you what you do. He says, you want to go tomorrow night? And it's, Saturday night. I says, yeah. He says, the only time you catch a snipe is at night. Right, Corky? Corky, yeah, that's right. How about you, Del? Right, you want to go out hunting snipes with Shep? Yeah. Okay, you got the scene? Saturday night, I am dressed in my canvas coat, my sheepskin, with the big collar. I've got my corduroy hat. I'm wearing my overshoes. I got on my high knickers with the high things that lace up. We're going hunting. And we go out into the swamp in Delbert's Monterey, Bumpus's Monterey. We drive way out in the swamp. Now, we had a swamp that was like 500 miles long. And we drive deep into the swamp. And now we're out in the darkness. And BG is talking in whispers. He says, you can't talk out loud. The snipe will hear you. And if they hear you, they'll forget it. They're very shy. Now look, we're going to drop you off here. And me and Corky and Del are going into the woods, deeper in the woods. And we will chase the snipe toward you. Now you get in the water there. And you stand in the water and hold this burlap bag. You hold the bag between your legs, hold it open, see, like that. And the snipe will see the bag and think that it's a burrow. You know what a burrow is? It's a hole in the ground. See, he'll see that, and he'll run into the bag. Now, you got to whistle. And when you have to keep whistling. Now, the snipe hears the whistling, see, and thinks that there's another snipe. Now, for some reason or other, and I don't know why it is, but snipe like to hear you whistle Dixie. Do you know how to whistle Dixie? I say, yeah. They say, okay, as soon as we go, you start whistling Dixie, and you keep the bag between the knees, and the snipe will come running in. Okay, good luck. Here's the bag. Well, I climb out of the car, and I got the bag. It's a burlap sack, and I go down into the water, which is like 500 degrees below zero, and it is cold. Oh, boy, is it cold. The wind is blowing out of the trees. It is as dark as the inside of your hat. And I start going... I am hunting snipe, and I'm excited. And they go off into the darkness, and they're gone. And I am suddenly aware, all around me is the swamp. I'm scared. There's nothing but darkness. What's that over there by the tree? Well, I was scared out of my skull. And I am really scared. And I am still excited. I'm hunting snipe. And I got that bag between my knees, and I'm whistling Dixie. Well, I whistled Dixie for 5 hours up to my knees in the swamps. And dawn is coming up like thunder over the gasworks far away. When it suddenly dawned on me, I have been T-A-K-E-N. I have been taken. And ever since that day... Now, this is why I never have told this story before, because it's so embarrassing. Ever since that day, whenever I go back home, guys holler out of pool rooms, "Hey, Shep, how about going out for some snipe? There goes the snipe hunter." I never, ever lived that down. And I became known in certain circles as I can't even say it now. Can't say it now. I will not say it. But I will never forget hunting snipe. And as far as I'm concerned, those Jersey hunters out there in the darkness banging away at the only 3 ducks that were seen all that day, those guys plunging up in the Maine woods shooting at each other, and me standing knee-deep in the swamp whistling Dixie, we're all in the same bag. In the same bag. By the way, Finn, how would you like to do a little snipe hunting? I know there's some snipe out there back of Hackensack, out there by the junkyard. You like to go out tonight? Snipe hunting.